So, self-directed IRA, what is it? A lot of people say, gee, I'm going to pull the money out and do the self-directed IRA thing. We're not pulling money out of the market, all right? We're not pulling money out of that retirement account. We're just shifting it to a custodian that allows self-direction. So it's not a legally defined term. It's an industry term. It just describes the type of account that we're going to use. But virtually anything can be shifted into a self-directed nature. This is a big one, all right? This is probably the biggest one because I hear people say all the time you can't buy real estate, all right? What can you buy with a retirement account? The easiest thing to do is look at what you can't buy. There's two things you can't buy: collectibles and life insurance contracts, all right? Sometimes people will put a third in there and it's stock in certain corporations. It's not a question whether you can or can't do that from the IRA side. It's something to do with the legal aspects of those corporations that prohibit those retirement accounts from going in. But if you look at the rules for retirement accounts, life insurance contracts, certain collectibles. So does real estate fall outside that? If it's not prohibited, it's therefore allowed. That's the way the law works. So real estate is definitely okay. This is not new, by the way. All right. When I started the exchange business 20 years ago, I had more hair on my head. It was definitely darker than it is today. But I looked like a pretty young guy, and people would come up and say, gee, I remember it was this way or that way. And I'd have to say, no, not really. It's always been this way. The IRA world's roughly 20, 25 years behind the 1031 world. So a lot of what we're dealing with today in the IRA world is just people's lack of knowledge of what's out there, the lack of opportunity, possibility. The people that do our legal work, they laugh because they'll have other lawyers in the law firm walking down the hall say, you can't do that. And they'd have to say, yes, you can. So, we look at this and we understand what we can buy, and those are the only two restrictions. So if you want to go buy that Corvette that you think you're going to drive and it's a collectible, well, hey, that's not something you're going to be able to do. It has less to do with what you're going to buy than it does to do with what you're going to do with what you acquire. So sort of like 1031s, it's got to be real property held for investment if we're looking at real estate. Well, the IRA world's the same way. There's a little bit more restriction for the IRA world we'll talk about. Why use the IRA? Today, why do you think clients come into us? Why do you think they come in and say, gee, I'd like to go do this? Well, a variety of reasons. I mentioned the volatility earlier. With the stock market, I have people that literally come into the office with a check in hand. They said, I've had it, and I've taken a check for this. If you take a check and you haven't gotten one in another one this year, you've got 60 days to get that money back into an account. So we've had a number of clients literally walk into our office with a check in hand. They've cashed out of that IRA, cashed out of the stock market. They've got 60 days to get it back in. I've had people come in 70 days later. That's too late. But the people, inside the 60, we can get them back in, get that money back into play. And a lot of these people have just said, they're willing to pay the tax to go buy the real estate. They see the opportunity with the real estate today. They want to take advantage of it. And they're consigned to the fact they're going to pay the tax to go do this, and they don't have to. So, like I said earlier, ask the questions. We've got people walk in and do that. $3.7 trillion in retirement funds. $3.7 trillion. That's a fair bit of money, all right? Of that, 2% is what's in real estate right now. And that 2% is primarily in REITs, real estate investment trusts. So historically, if you wanted to go buy real estate with your retirement account, what would you buy? You'd be sold a REIT, real estate investment trust, and that was it. You don't have to do that. You can buy the piece of dirt. You can buy the rental house. You can buy the apartment building. You can buy the office building. You can buy the house at the beach that you plan to retire in 20 years from now. You just can't use it until it's been distributed to you, until you've taken it as a disbursement from your retirement account. So when you look at these things, the opportunities are just huge. Huge opportunities. We like to say, rarely is a situation where we can or can't do something. It's how we're going to get it done. We're going to talk about some scenarios at the end, but there are really all kinds of opportunities there. And with the hardships in today's financial world, you'd be surprised some of the transactions we're working on. Yesterday, we're looking at a transaction where we're taking tax money and both qualified and unqualified money, and we're going to take and buy this piece of property that's got timber on it. Well, the IRA is actually going to buy the timber deed. So we're going to break up the purchase price of this land into two different pieces, two different deeds, and the person's going to take their personal money, go buy the deed for the real property portion that is not the timber, and we've got another portion going to the timber deed. What's going to happen with that? So never say never. Give us a call, ask. So what do you think ought to be in real estate? I just told you 2% is. I mean, most financial advisors, we've got a couple of them in the room, I would bet that they'd be willing to concur. You probably ought to have 20% of it at least into real estate. Most of our clients, honestly, they're real estate people, so their number's going to be way, way higher than that. I've got a buddy that runs one of the biggest financial firms here in town. This guy's a stockbroker, all right? Runs their wealth management division. 40+% of his portfolio is in real estate. He likes real estate. So you're the person that's going to give yourself the answer for that. But in today's market, why buy real estate? So if we look at another reason, why buy that real estate today? It's a tangible asset. It is an inflationary hedge. So anything we're going to see inflation? Anybody? Probably. You're going to hear Mark talk next about interest rates on apartments. You think the rates are going to go up or down? What happens to this market when we start looking at, are we at the bottom? How do you know when we're at the bottom? You don't know it till you look back at it in the rearview mirror. What happens to the people chasing a property on the way down versus the number of people chasing a property on the way up? They were talking about timing on 1031s. Today we've got tight 1031s. We've got closing sales and purchases real close. Market gets tighter and tighter and tighter. We've got a situation where people are less willing to cooperate with you time-wise. But think about the opportunities that are there. If we've got retirement money, think of this. It's a totally tax-deferred transaction. So you buy an investment property with your IRA. You own it for 5, 10 years, the thing goes up in value. Anything that's happening with that property, it's like it's Uncle Harry's. It's not yours, keep in mind. But anything that's happening with that's going to go back into that account. You sell the property. Do you have any timelines that you have anything that you've got to get done in a certain period of time afterwards? No. You sell the property. You don't have 45 days or 180 days to get the deal done. You sell it. If you want to go back into real estate, great. If you want to go buy a CD, great. If you want to go back in the stock market, great. It doesn't matter. There's no time constraints there. Flipping property. This is one of the things, quite honestly, over the last 20 years, a lot of people have sort of pitched IRAs as an alternative to 1031. That's not true. They're two totally different things, all right? Look at what you own personally. You buy and sell things. Joe went over some of the different benefits, the opportunities you personally have if you're buying and selling properties personally, and you've done this for years and years and years. When you sell the property, you do an exchange. If you're done and you say, gee, I don't want to do any more exchanges, what are you going to sell? You're going to sell the property. What are you going to pay? You're going to pay long-term capital gains tax on that at disposition if you've held that last investment for more than a year and held it for investment. Anything that's inside the IRA, when it comes out, is going to be taxed at normal income tax. So sometimes people say, gee, why would you do it? Why would you own real estate in your IRA versus outside? It's really an irrelevant question. What should be asked is, what do you want to invest in with your IRA? Because there's reason to own things personally, and there's reasons to own things in the retirement account. Two totally different situations, and it should always be a single question. What am I going to make? How am I going to, well, three questions. What am I going to make? How am I going to make it? When am I going to make this? Buying, selling at the bottom. What's a common complaint today? It's like, I don't want to sell at the bottom. My suggestion to you is, with that attitude, it's like, look, you're there whether you sell or not. The question shouldn't be whether you sell at the bottom. It should be what's going to get you whole the fastest, what's going to get you going forward the fastest, what's going to make you the most money today. And if the investment that you rode down there is the best way forward, fine. If it's a security, maybe you sell it, take that 30-day wash rule if you're in love with what got you there, and buy it back. But we're always going to look at this thing and understand the course forward, the best path forward. Flipping properties. This is something sort of a fallacy in the IRA world, okay? People say, gee, you know, something's purchased by an IRA, since you don't have 1031 rules, you don't, you know, a flip property doesn't work for 1031, you've held it for resale, it doesn't, you can't do an exchange on property held for resale. But you can do it with an IRA. Really, you're not looking at something any different. You have to understand that flip property, if you establish a pattern, there's something called dealer status. All right, if you cross that line from an investor to a dealer, it doesn't really work any differently in the IRA world than it does 1031 world. If it's something that's flipped over and over and over again, it's now something held for resale, and you're going to have some tax exposure even though that investment was made with the IRA. But if you went down the courthouse steps tomorrow and you used, let's say, our checkbook advantage process, went down the courthouse steps, bought a property on the courthouse steps, 2 days later somebody came in and made you an offer that was too good to pass up, and you chose to take advantage of that offer, you could sell it and you could roll that money into the next property or stock or whatever you want, and you'd be fine. But you get too lucky too often, now we've got a situation where you're holding the property for resale as opposed to investment. All right? 1031s, you can't do this. You could do it once maybe, and we had people doing that in the hot days. You know, we did improvement exchange where somebody would build something out, take ownership. A week later, somebody would make an offer that was great, and they'd do it. But you don't want to get too lucky too often once again.